So in this class, user setup and security configuration, pretty much I'm going to show you how security is set up. Now, it should already be set up in your system. I'm just going to go through, as far as how to make basic changes and, in the security setup, we're going to go through kind of what everything means. That way, if you needed to make changes, you at least know what you're looking at. You can take it from there. Now, once we have security set up, the last kind of step as far as basic setup goes is to create what we call user profiles. Now, everyone obviously has an employee profile. That's for like personal information, whereas a user profile links up to that employee profile for login credentials. And when I say login credentials, I mean what security do people have? What dashboards do they have access to? Things like that. So, everyone needs a user profile in order to log in and see what they are supposed to or allowed to see. So, with that being said, let's take a look at security first. So we're going to go to Administration, and we have a Security tab on the left, and there's only one screen in it, the Security Designer. Now, pretty much with the Security Designer, in here we're creating what's called security profiles. You can think of it like a security level. It's just called a security profile. Each profile contains specific settings and privileges that tell the system what this security profile can see, who it can see, some other various privileges. In this Security Designer, we have a list of every screen and function available in the system. Now we can create generic privileges using these screens, or we can create screen-specific privileges for every single object, which you may not want to do unless for some reason you really need specific security. So pretty much in this designer on the left is a list of all my security profiles. You can just ignore a lot of these. When it comes down to it, we really have three basic security profiles. We have an admin, right, which is what you're currently using right now. This is it's pretty much like full access to the system. You have access to do anything and everything. We also we recommend having a supervisor privilege and a user privilege. Now with user privilege, user profile, that's typically the most restricted security profile, right? Because we don't want our users having access to a lot of the things that our supervisors or admins might have access to. We'll take a look at the user security profile. Now, if we click on, I'm going to click on Pick User, you'll notice we get some information on the right here. Pretty much, there's two things that make up a security profile: privileges and objects. Objects are, like I was saying before, every single screen or function that's considered an object, and privileges are what and who we're allowed to do these functions for, or who we're allowed to see on a particular screen. When you're building your security, which you really shouldn't have to, because the system does come preloaded with the recommended setting. Obviously, you might need to change a few things if your department, operates a little differently. So let's take a look at default privileges first. Now, this button, Go to Default Privileges, allows you to set general default privileges for everything, every object that you give this security profile. So if I click on Go to Default Privileges, it brings me to this screen. Pretty much, these are, these are who are allowed to view, request for, approve for, deny. So with all actions, this is like if we wanted to set privileges for viewable, requestable, we wanted to set, this is like the end-all, be-all of privileges. However, when it comes to user, we do want to be a little bit more specific. So let's ignore all actions first. We're going to open up viewable. Now this means for every screen that we're giving our users access to, who are we going to allow them to view? And it's pretty much broken up into shifts, groups, and employees. So, are they allowed to view all shifts on a schedule? If there are specific shifts that they're allowed to see, well, then we would say shifts in list and then create a custom list of shifts that they're allowed to view. If they're only allowed to view the shift that they're assigned to, then you could just click the box for self shift, and you could ignore entire shift if company head. So then with groups, kind of the same thing. What groups are we allowed to view? All groups, just the group I'm in, or a list of specific groups? And last but not least, if we want to get really specific, what employees are we allowed to view? Omit self means that, like, if this box was checked, that means that I can't view myself. Obviously, we want to uncheck that. Am I allowed to view all employees or only specific employees?
Now, what does that mean when you say that they can view all employees?
So pretty much like if I were to pull up, if I'm only allowed to see, maybe only the employees in my group, you could, you can leave it, and this is for like schedule views, for certain reports, maybe. When it comes to the user setting, typically the only time, you're allowed to view everyone is in schedule views, daily, weekly, monthly schedules. Users don't really need to see other users in a report, right? That's, that's more for supervisors. What we recommend is, we say all shifts, all groups, and all employees for viewable. Because what's going to happen is we are going to kind of limit through object-specific privileges. And I know this might be a little confusing. Once we get through all of it, you'll have a better understanding. And then we do have a couple of other options. As far as viewable goes, are they only allowed to view people equal to their title, less than their title, or greater than their title? And you can have equal and less than. If it's like you can't see anyone above your seniority, we also have that down here.
Now, when you say that they can see somebody else, can they see what time off they have and stuff like that, or?
Well, they're going to see that regardless because that gets posted on the schedule.
Okay.
They're not going to see like how many hours they have left in their bank or anything. But if someone like called out sick, they're going to see that on the schedule.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, so we have our viewable set up. The nice thing about all these tabs is they're all the same thing. It's just applied differently. So now it's who are they allowed to put in requests for, and requests meaning overtime or time off. Well, these are our users, right? So they shouldn't be able to put in a request for anyone but themselves, correct?
Correct.
So to make it really easy, we just want to have nothing checked. That means when nothing's checked, that means that you can only do this for yourself, because by default, everything, omit self checked is the default setting. So with requestable, we want to uncheck that. That means that you can only put in requests for yourself. We don't need to worry about anything else.
Got it.
And now, this next part's pretty easy. Users typically aren't able to do anything as far as approve or deny, correct? So we want to leave it set to the default settings, which is just omit self-checked. When omit self is checked and nothing else is checked, that means that you can't do anything for anyone, because this is saying that we can't do it for any shifts, any groups, any employees, including myself, because I have omit self-checked. So whenever you see just omit self-check, that means that it's kind of like turned off. That's the easiest way to think about it. So as far as approvable with stipulation, and deniable, we all want them to say the same thing, just omit self-checked. Now, the last thing we need to do is we need to turn off all actions, because what happens is if we have any settings in all actions, it's going to overwrite what we set for viewable or requestable. All actions, like I was saying before, is kind of like a blanket privilege, where, you know, whether it's viewable, requestable, approvable, whatever we have in here is going to be the privilege for everything. So we want to turn it off. We just want to check the box that says none. And what happens when we do that is, watch, I'll save. It's going to go to the default privilege of just omit self-checked, which, like I said, means that it's turned off. So if I go back to all actions, you'll see that the only thing checked is omit self, meaning it's all actions is turned off. Now the system's going to look at the specific privileges that we just set.
Got it.
So when it comes to user security profile, you really don't ever want to use all objects, you know, because, you know, viewable is obviously a lot different than requestable, which is a lot different than approve with stip, and deny. So unless everything was the same, we wouldn't use all actions. So once we set that, you click save, and you go back. So now you have default privileges, you know, set, and these, you know, privileges are going to be used in with our objects. And that just means that whatever screens we give someone, whether it's a daily schedule or the scheduled time off screen, it's going to use these default privileges to determine, you know, when I pull up a daily schedule, who shows up. When I go to put in for time off, can I select anyone other than myself? That's where the privileges come in. So now if I were to click on Update Objects, this is a list of every screen and function available in the system. And as you can see, it is quite a list. However, we added a few, the ability to filter. We also added categories to kind of make your life easier as far as, well, you know, is this screen a supervisor screen, an employee screen, a report screen? That's what category is referring to. Name is the name of the object. So like, for instance, add employee to a schedule. This is a function, and we categorized it. Typically, this is what we view it as. It's a, you know, a supervisor function. Keep in mind that what we might say is a supervisor function, some departments might say, well, no, that's only that's only what our admins would do, or you know what I mean? Our supervisor might be a little different than your supervisor, so you don't, you know, what we categorized it as isn't the you know, end all be all. It might be a little different for you, but this is what typically it's used, or who it's used by. For instance, let's take a look. So our daily schedule. This is a screen, you know, it's an object. So this is, you know, an employee, aka user screen. And whenever you see employee, that means that, you know, that's kind of like admin, supervisor, and user, right? Everyone should have this screen. Whereas maybe with a supervisor screen, only our admins and supervisors have it, right? So users typically don't get much more than employee. Supervisors get supervisor and employee, and then admins would pretty much get everything. Now, these 4 columns on the right here are they're telling you a little bit about the object itself. So this first column, desktop, if we see an X in this column, that pretty much means that this screen is available in the desktop program, which is what we're currently on. Web means that this object is available on the web portal. So as you can see, certain things, like the ability to run reports, is available on both. But now we do have, some like payroll stuff is only available on the desktop, which, anything that isn't available on the web is, it's typically stuff that supervisors nor users need. It's really just like admin and payroll type screens and functionality. Now, this specific column here is it's for if we have a screen that maybe doesn't follow our default privileges. So, like we said, let's see. So for like user, we'll say viewable is just all shifts, right? Nothing else. Meaning they can only view shifts. They can't view any employees right now. So if we go to update objects, I have a specific privilege for my daily schedule that says I can view everyone. But so like, let's see, change password. No, I'm sorry, that's a bad example. Request time off. When I go to this screen, I won't be able to view everyone. I'll only be able to view myself because it's looking at default privileges instead of a specific privilege. So, to make a long story short, pretty much you have your kind of master privileges that all screens use. But then if you need a different set of privileges, maybe a little bit more specific for just one screen or one function, you can add a specific privilege by clicking on the object and clicking Add Privilege. And then inherited, don't worry about inheritance. I don't recommend using it. It's kind of like a leftover from an older. It's a leftover feature from an older version. I don't like using it because it does get a little messy as far as when you're using inherited security. So don't worry about that. Now, like I said, all of this stuff is already set up for you. I'm just kind of giving you a very high-level overview of what is in it. If you ever did need to make changes, we do offer an advanced class that really kind of dives into it. And I know what we're talking about, your head might be spinning right now, but that's why I'm saying, this is already set up for you. I'm just showing you what you have. Now, with supervisors, our security privileges are a little different. We're a little bit more open now, right? We don't have to be as restricting because supervisors are supposed to be able to do things for other people. So for things like viewable, all shifts, all groups, all employees. Requestable, all shifts, all groups, all employees. Approvable. Are your supervisors allowed to approve their own time off or no? Someone else has to do it?
Usually the chief. Actually, the chief has the overall say in everything.
He would have admin security.
Yes.
For supervisors, though, like if someone were to call out sick, a supervisor would approve that, correct?
Yes.
Okay, but if the supervisor were to put in for time off, the the chief would have to approve it?
You know, I mean, that's kind of a, you know, we have a paper still to this day. So whenever somebody needs off, if a fireman needs off, the officer signs it, kicks it upstairs, and the chief, not that he ever denies anybody, but he signs off on it. So again, it's, I don't know why we keep doing these things, but if it's per the contract and it says if you're outside of the 48-hour window and you want time off and nobody's off, that's fine. You can put it in as long as your officer knows. What does the chief need to know? Because if he needs to see it, he can see it up on the screen. But again, that's what we'll discuss, I guess, when you guys come on the 1st.
Okay, well, if your supervisors aren't allowed to approve time off and only the chief is, then maybe just for approvable, select none. Same thing for approve with stiff or deny, just so they don't have that option. They can only put in requests.
Okay.
That's up to you. And then the nice thing with admin, because so you'll notice here, when I click on supervisor, you see where it says non-inherited objects. This is just how many objects in this list are checked off for this security profile. 145. For basic user, only 27. But now, when we go to admin, you'll see it's 0 and 0. Well, that's because all we have to do for an admin security profile is check this box, security administrator. Turning this box on kind of flips a switch in the system and says, well, we don't care about privileges or objects. They have access to everything and anything. So checking this box gives whoever has this security 100% access to everything and everyone in the system. Simple enough.
Yeah.
All right, so like I said, really, you don't need to worry about getting into the absolutely, nitty-gritty of this security, because the most basic security setup is already preloaded in your system, or at least it should be. Now, when you have people come out for training, you might, once you get a little bit more familiar with the system and what certain screens and functions are after your training, you might say, oh, well, you know what? We don't really need to give our users this, or maybe we should give users this. So you might configure security down the road, but at least to get started, you don't really need to fuss with anything security profile-wise. I was just kind of showing you what it is, what's in there, how to change it if need be. But like I said, as far as right now, you don't really need to make any changes. So we can close out of that. Now let's get into creating our employees' login credentials, so they can start using the system. What we're going to do is, because this is the first time we're creating login credentials, we can do everyone at once through a screen called Mass Auto Create Users. And that's under Administration and then Employee Center. Mass Auto Create Users. Now, like I was saying before, user profiles allow employees access to the system. That gives them a login, it gives them a username, a password. We also assign what security profile they have, what dashboard they have, how many days they're allowed to go back and put in for anything. Say like I worked overtime and I forgot to put it in. How long do I have to go back and kind of put it in retroactively before maybe a supervisor has to do it for me? So as far as, this screen, here's where we select who we're going to build the login credentials for. I usually recommend doing it for a security profile at a time, because what's going to happen is we put in our settings, and we'll go through those in a second, and all of these settings get applied to whoever we select. So typically I recommend everyone does their users first, right? Put in their settings, build it, and then they do their supervisors next, and then they do the admins last or whatever. So pretty much this section up here is where we put in our username settings. Usernames are you can't change your username willy-nilly like a password. Like if I ever wanted to change my password, I could at any point in time, whereas a username is a little bit more permanent. What would you like to use as for everyone's username? People typically go first initial, last name.
Yes.
Or maybe an email address. It's up to you.
No, first one. First initial, last name.
Okay, so let's go over how to set that up first. So in this case, here we want to select our employees. So like I said, you want to do all your users first. So you just check the boxes next to everyone who should be a user, not a supervisor, not an admin, just a user. So now with username details, this is saying, well, what order are we doing it? First name, middle initial, last name, which is what the default is. We want that. But if you want to do like last name, then first name or something, you could switch up the order. But let's leave it like that. Now down here is where we can get a little specific. So under options, it says first, X amount of letters of first name. Well, if we're doing first initial, we're going to say the first one letter of first name. Now, we're going to do first initial, last name, so we can leave first 0 letters of last name just like that, because we're going to say use the full last name. And you'll notice once I check that box, this gets grayed out. So what this is saying is for usernames, we're going to go in first, middle, and then last name order. We're going to use the first one letter of first name and then the full last name. This pretty much equates to first initial, last name. And then we have the ability, if you ever wanted to add like a special character after, say first name or middle initial or last name, you can do that if you wanted to use like employee code or...
Did you ever work with firemen before?
What?
Did you ever work with firemen before?
Yeah, they typically just use first initial, last name.
I was going to say, they're lucky they can get that part right.
Well, I just figured, I'm just, just in case, hey, well, what's this do? What's this do? I kind of just got to go through everything. But yeah, most of the time it is just first initial, last name. All right, so we have our username set. Passwords are automatically created. We don't tell the system what the passwords are going to be because everyone's is obviously going to be different. What it creates everyone's like a temporary password just to get you logged in for the first time. Once you log in using this temporary password, you have to change it to whatever you want it to be. And this is something that you'll go over in training more, but I might as well just let you know now. Everyone's initial password is going to be the first letter of their first name and then the first 8 letters of their last name. Or I should say up to the first 8 letters of their last name. So if their last name is shorter than 8 letters, well then to log in, their password is going to be first initial, last name again. Once they log in, the system's going to say, okay, you need to change your password. And it's there that they can put in whatever password they want. So we have our username created. Now this is where we're going to put in our settings for everyone that we selected in this list, aka all of our basic users. So this is only going to be your basic firefighters. We're going to leave the supervisors and admin staff out of this. Security level, do not worry about this because you might say, well, what does that do? This is how our old security used to work in an older version, which you're not using. You're using the newest one, which looks at security profile. So, you know, in all actuality, security level doesn't even get looked at. So even though this says, you know, sec admin, don't worry about it because it doesn't even get looked at. Security profile is the security that the system uses. So here is where we say, all right, everyone in this list that we selected is going to be an admin or a supervisor or a user. So we select user. You'll remember we created a web dashboard for everyone. You're going to just select that, and then you're just going to select the default tile profile, which is the desktop dashboard that we created in the previous class. And then we have number of past days to allow update. So if one of your guys, you know, worked overtime and forgot to put in for it, how long would you let him go back and put it in for?
Actually, that's the first thing the guys do when they come in for overtime. Make sure they sign that slip. So, I mean, if I have to put something, I mean, a couple of days, because that's the most important thing that they do in this place is make sure they sign that.
Oh yeah, with users, I've seen anywhere from 3 days to 7 days. You know, or if you forget to, which most likely they're not, right? Because you know they want to get paid for it. So this is if in the rare instance someone forgets to say they worked overtime, we can give them, you know, 3 days to go back and do it, or maybe a week. It's up to you. But you just put in that number of days in this section here. So if it was, you know, we're going to give them up to 3 days, meaning if I worked overtime on Monday, I have until Thursday to put in for it.
Got it.
Now we have all this created. We need to apply it to everyone in this list. So everyone we selected in this select employee section is going to show up, let me clear this out, is going to show up down in the bottom section right here. So I only selected 3 people. Now they're green because they already have usernames and stuff created for them. So when you do this, it'll be white and you'll just see their names. You should only have the people who are going to be basic users in this current list. What we're going to do is we're just going to click Apply Format, and then you'll see, boom, a username pops up. And that's just showing you a preview of what their username is going to be based on the options we put in, which is first initial, last name. And then once you're done, you just click Save. And what that's going to do is it's going to build the login credentials for everyone in your every user that we told it to, and then your users are created. Then after that, move on to the supervisors.
Now you know what? When I clicked on that, when I clicked Apply, and then when I click Save, it says usernames already exist in the database. Cannot save these entries. So did I do something wrong? And it only creates 2 user profiles.
No, let's take a look. I'm going to make you the presenter, okay?
Sure.